Hi, everybody. Today's December 27th, 2023. I hope your Christmas was merry and bright. And if not, there's always prospect for a Happy New Year. I'm hoping for a Happy New Year for our guest, Sarah Braasch, and many more after this. But, some of your previous New Year's in the more recent memory were not. Can you tell us a little about your journey? We're going to kind of spend some time on the event, and they happened at my colored alma mater here in theme, Yale Blue. So that was Yale University back in the day. So tell us what the day was, what was the incident, what was your unfortunate moment of fame?
Right, exactly. And so I ended up being one of the, unfortunately, the unwitting star of one of the, we weren't called Karens back then, we were called Beckys. But I was the unwitting star of one of the Karen Gone Wild viral videos, one of the Living While Black viral videos. And I sort of consider, there's always been race hoaxes for a very long time, but I consider the Living While Black race hoaxes to be the incarnation that was sort of inspired by the Me Too movement. So the Living While, and I was basically back in 2018 was basically the first of the first, or one of the very first of the Living While Black race hoaxes that took place on a campus, specifically on a college campus at Yale. And so what happened was that what the false narrative was that was propagated around the world in seconds was that I was trolling the main ground floor common room of my Yale dorm at 2 a.m, looking for random sleeping Black people to call 911 on. Because I'm a secret Nazi at Yale, a human.
You'd done that many times prior, right?
Oh, right. And that I had a history of doing this because I was a secret Nazi.
Just to interrupt slightly, if conversely you had been doing that while carrying a mattress around on your back, you would have come out famously and made maybe $1 million movie contract.
Right. So that was the story that, my life basically was decimated in mere moments, unbeknownst to me. I didn't even realize what had happened to me. And then, it was everywhere. I mean, if people might not remember me, this was, more than 5 years ago now, but it was everywhere. It was in the New York Times, it was on CNN, it was global. My friends in Europe were online, defending me. It was across the globe. It was a global story.
You were a grad student at that time. Had you already gotten Yale degrees? My understanding, you graduated from University of Minnesota, and then you went to Yale for a master's or two, and you were working on your PhD.
Right. I was a PhD candidate at that point, and I still am. I just have to finish my dissertation. But I got the 2 masters that you get just along the way to your PhD. So
the topic was what, KKK studies? Or
exactly, Karen studies. Karen studies.
Karen studies.
So actually, I'm in the philosophy department, but I was actually also the PhD student, social psychology PhD student of Tom Tyler in the Yale Law School. That's why it's just so, what happened to me is it's just beyond ludicrous, because I'm literally, a lifelong human and civil rights attorney. And I was working with under Tom Tyler, who still is the co-director of the Justice Collaboratory with Tracy Mears. They were both on Barack Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force. So and my one advisor in the philosophy department at Yale is Jason Stanley, who, some of your viewers might recognize that name. He's kind of considered like the premier sort of social justice warrior, talking head that goes around on, the cable shows, and decries fascism. So it's just.
So you were, campuses maybe 60 years ago were about 2/3 liberals or left, and there were some, minority of conservative voices there. Campuses now, on a faculty basis, are about 95 to 98, 99% non-conservative. So you go from Democrats to leftists to anarchists to super commie, whatever. It's pretty much the spectrum of the left, and that passes for kind of intellectual diversity amongst the faculty. I imagine the students are not necessarily that different per se in the sociology department. Though I have your department correct for your PhD. Who would have granted it?
So it would have been the philosophy department.
Philosophy. I apologize.
Okay.
So, but none of these are bastions of conservatism,
Right.
and amongst the student population, nor the faculty, I assume.
Right.
But so here you are, I imagine, living your pleasantly, left of center existence and studying what for your thesis. What was your proposal?
So I work on the philosophical foundations of law, and so the title of my PhD dissertation is actually the statics and mechanics of social institutions. So I'm sort of analyzing, and I employ game theory and agent-based computational modeling. And so I am trying to analyze and understand how social institutions arise in a population, how they evolve and devolve, and how they eventually collapse. So that's
So you actually got to run a perfect experiment, but unfortunately it was yourself and your emotion.
I don't need to do any empirical study.
You're like, I mean, it's something you don't necessarily want to be. Like, if you ever know that the temperature of a plasma, a plasma explosion, whatever, I assume there's some kind of thermometer they put in there, but you don't want to be that thermometer. So you're in a sense the thermometer that measured the explosion.
That's right. Exactly.
Or a canary in the coal mine, or whatever, more ancient analogy. Is the canary, if they're the coal mine, you're the canary. Are you still alive?
I'm hanging on. It's been a very I didn't think I was going to get emotional. I'm gonna try not to cry, but it's been a hellish nightmare. Just quite literally, it's been a hellish nightmare for me for more than 5 years now that I've been living it.
Well, I'm so sorry, and I we can take time and okay, fair enough. So can we first of all, just definitional terms? Living while black. What was that? Was that a hashtag? Was that a set of videos? Was that a proposition? A. B. There's the Me Too movement, and Me Too, I thought, it kind of coincides with Believe All Women. I might be wrong.
Right.
And from my gross understanding of the situation right here, I assume you are a woman, and I don't want to make false assumptions. And your accusee was a woman, or accuser, as it turns out, as well. So if we're supposed to believe all women, and one woman says X and another woman says Y, how can we believe all women simultaneously? Just curious about that as a side note.
That's a really excellent point, and that's a point that I've made repeatedly, is that it was what happened to me happened at the very height of the Me Too movement, right? Where we were just supposed to believe all women. If a woman makes an accusation that she was sexually assaulted or harassed or whatever, then you were just supposed to destroy, the male target of her accusation, no questions asked. And so the same thing happened with the Living While Black movement. So the Living While Black movement, as I interpret it, was really inspired by the Me Too movement. And I think that maybe even more so than the Me Too movement, I feel like the Living While Black movement really just almost instantaneously morphed into this, this, I call it the Black trauma moral outrage industry, where it's all of a sudden everyone was trying to get their 5 minutes of Twitter fame, and was trying to capture, some white woman in public engaging in some behavior that they could construe as racist in any degree, and then throw that up online, and then crucify this person, and have the woke Twitter mob go after them, get them fired, it was really wild for a while. Like the one really good example that popped up into my head was that I feel like was really egregious and maybe was sort of like the beginning of a turning point where people started to realize, like, this is crazy. This is crazy what we're doing. It's gladiatorial. It's a blood sport, basically. And we're all pretending that these nobody white women Karens are coming to lynch Black children like Emmett Till, and it was so out of control. So there's Frederick T. Joseph, who's another one of these, it was a whole industry that popped up that exploded. Frederick T. Joseph is another one of these, I call them Sean Kane style Twitter race hustlers who captured this this young white woman in a dog park in Brooklyn named Emma Sarley. Do you remember that one?
Well, I'm kind of more fixated on the Central Park one, but
Right.
carry on.
Yes. And Amy Cooper and I consider her my sister, and I love her to death. And we've been supporting one another for years now. And we're really in this fight together. So Amy Cooper, is probably all of your viewers are aware, was the Central Park Living While Black race hoax, where she was confronted by Christian Cooper, and she did have her dog
unrelated.
Yeah.
Aside from the last name.
Relation. That's right. And then they got into a verbal altercation, and he absolutely was engaging in very threatening behavior.
It involved a dog, her dog. And did he like take the dog or try to feed the dog? I forget what it was.
He had dog treats in his pocket, and he tried to lure her dog away from her with dog treats, which my understanding is that this is actually a felony in New York. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I've been told.
Well, the concept is, I mean, without going too Home Alone on this kind of thing, the dog is there as protection, and a good way to deter dog protection is to feed him. And so if she's a single woman, she's using her dog, whatever, as an insulator. I forget exactly what the whole thing went down, but our mutual friend Wilfred Riley has spoken on this. I don't know if you want to channel him a little bit. He's got a book called what is it? What's it called? Race Crime Hoax.
He's got, I think it's Hate Hoax or something very close to that. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I'm embarrassed because I haven't read it.
I should have written it down too. That's okay.
Anyway, so let's see if you can weave that in with Brooklyn, Central Park, Cooper's, and how, give us a kind of a quick overview of what was happening at the moment. I also want to bring in one other thing. Wasn't 2018 Brett Kavanaugh? Wasn't that the fall of Brett Kavanaugh?
Yes.
It wasn't literally the fall of Brett Kavanaugh. It could have been the fall of Brett Kavanaugh, but it was in the fall. And that was our autumn of Brett Kavanaugh, where Believe All Women kind of reached a fever pitch, where any woman was coming out and saying things that had no real rational basis of right. contemporaneous data of interaction with the gentleman. But where did you fall in this 2018 timeline? And maybe you can just kind of fill in the mood and what was, why now we should believe the Karens. I mean, tell us where this pendulum. What was it like? Where is the pendulum going?
That's right. So my incident happened in May of 2018, and then the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, which was sort of like the very height of the frenzy of Me Too and Believe All Women, happened in August, and then and carried over into September of 2018. And you had like Alyssa Milano, and then I really say that the Living While Black movement, even though Me Too movement was still going strong post my incident, but still I say that the Living While Black movement really was the death knell of the Me Too movement. And the reason why I say that is because, you can't believe all women when you're demonizing and terrorizing nobody white women, right? And so and obviously, I have no interest in returning to, the Me Too hoaxes, of which I believe that there were plenty. But I do believe that that is the case. And then now even you have Alyssa Milano, who was truly like the face of the Me Too movement, the face of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, the face of believe all women. You can never question a woman's accusation of sexual harassment or assault. And so now she just did, not too long ago, she did a podcast where she had Christian Cooper from the Central Park Living While Black race hoax with Amy Cooper. She had him on her podcast, and she was pushing the Central Park Living While Black race hoax. So if that doesn't tell you that Me Too is dead, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of sift into popular culture a little bit, I think Amber Heard had a lot to do with.
I was just going to mention that.
A nail in that coffin potentially, because people I think wanted to believe her because, I mean, after all, she's got XX chromosomes, and that aligns with truth all the time. But people actually know far more about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard than they know about, I don't know, the spike protein or something like that. They have a lot better formed opinions. And when that case came down, it's kind of the OJ case of this new era.
Right.
People have very strong opinions about what happened, and it's like there's no reason to believe everything she said, nor necessarily everything he said. But he was more believable.
Right.
No, I think they're both actors. And problematic actors, and often on drugs or alcohol, so whatever. But you were not. So your accuser, had you known before? I mean, she was apparently taking a nap in the main hallway of the Hall of Graduate Studies dorm or something like that, or what?
Yeah, and so what actually happened was of course, as has happened, as Wilfred Riley has pointed out in his book and in his commentary piece, The Karens Were Innocent. And he does, and he includes, he's my knight in shining armor. I just love it to death.
And he is.
In that piece. And so, as Wilfred Riley has pointed out repeatedly, what actually happened in my case, my Karen Gone Wild viral video, my Living While Black race hoax, is the antithesis of the false narrative that was propagated around the world. So actually what happened is that I was basically, living like this hermit Rapunzel at the top of a skinny tower on Yale's. I always joke about that, but it's true. Oh, that's great. That's great. I'm so glad that you have Wilfred's commentary piece up. It's so good. And it just, he's my hero. He's my.
So go get back to Rapunzel.
Okay, so I like to joke that I was, living like a hermit Rapunzel at the top of this tower on Yale's campus, which I truly was. And my dorm room was the only dorm room on this floor. The floor consisted of 2 rooms and a tiny landing in front of the elevator, and that's it. And so truly the people who were harassing and stalking me for months were seeking me out. They were coming to me, seeking me out for, the purpose of harassing me. I was the person who was being harassed. Truly, I was a crime victim. I was a crime victim at Yale. And so it's the exact opposite of what the false narrative was that was propagated around the world. And so what ended up happening is that, it's a very strange and convoluted tale, but I will try to do like the quick nutshell version, is that there was an incident back in February 2018 where I was followed by a stranger who happened to be a Black man into the elevator and up to my dorm room. And he followed me up there in violation of Yale housing regulations. And, but it wasn't really a big deal, but I had, I did decide to call the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police, as I'd always been instructed to do. And so they came, and so he had, I didn't know this at the time, I had no reason to know this, but he had been invited by a resident of the dorm to come to some kind of event, and then the people at the event were upset that I had called the campus police, and so they started harassing me that night back in February of 2018. And so that's how this all exploded. I ended up having a meeting with with Yale Housing, the Yale housing managers, and they said, Sarah, you did absolutely nothing wrong. Just go back to your dissertation. Don't worry about this. We're actually incredibly upset with the way that the resident coordinators or resident assistants of the dorm handled the situation and the way they treated you. And we're going to deal with these other students. They actually told me, you're the only person involved who did nothing wrong. And so what ultimately I think happened is that these students and these resident coordinators of the dorm, they were going to be punished. They were actually going to be punished for harassing me that night back in February of 2018. And so I think this is what I think based on, 2020 hindsight, everything I know at this point, is that what I think happened is that they got together and decided that they were going to accuse me of having, and this is literally what they accused me of. So they accused me of having perpetrated a racist hate crime comparable to a lynching. That's what they actually accused me of. And they went to, the DEI admins and deans and accused me of this. And so then it just exploded within the administration. And they decided that they were going to, use me as an example. And they wanted me to participate in a Maoist struggle session. They wanted me to participate in a public town hall where I was supposed to, profess my racism, my egregious racism to the entire Yale community and teach them how not to be racist like me. And then they wanted me to undergo implicit bias training. They wanted me, they said that they were going to implement implicit bias training for every incoming grad student because of my egregious racism. Like, it just got crazy, like, immediately.
Is this because of the elevator incident?
This is because of this is before the living or napping while Black hate crime hoax. This is months before May 8th, 2018.
Wow, so you had a couple months of this. So what floor did you live on?
It was the 12th floor.
What floor did he get off?
So he got off on the 12th floor. My floor, where my dorm room is one of two rooms on that floor. Just, it's a tiny floor with just two rooms. And the other room is called the 12th floor common room, but truly it's a misnomer. It was a little used room. It was just used for.
But in this case, he actually went to an event next door to you?
He did, but at the time that he followed me up there, so you need to be a resident and you need to have a key to use the elevator. But I knew that other students or other friends of the residents had a practice of, just following residents into the elevator, right, so they could basically piggyback and.
I grew up in New York City. It's like all apartment buildings. The people are kind of slinking in. You're told not to let people slink in.
Right, exactly. And that's the other thing, is that right now there have been major incidents. Well, for years, there have always been major incidents, but there were just recently major incidents of crime on Yale's campus where, students, one in particular very recently, where a student let someone into the dorm, and then there was a burglary. Students have been held at gunpoint.
Yeah. When I'm in New York now, or apartments in general, and the door opens up, I hold back unless I've been buzzed in. I don't want people to get the wrong impression. So that was all pre. And then, were you, I don't know, it's hard to say this, but were you set up for this napping incident or whatever it is?
Yes. Now, with full 2020 hindsight, absolutely. That is what I believe. And I think that all of the events, the subsequent events bear that out. So I think what happened is that, I had already had a target on my back for expulsion by the Yale administration for years. And we'll get into that. But what I believe now happened is that I believe the Yale admin saw an opportunity. They already hated me. As I mentioned, I was already persona non grata, a social pariah on Yale's campus. The Yale administration, was very well aware of me and was looking to expel me. Anyway, so when this happened back in February of 2018, I think that the Yale administration saw an opportunity because the VP of University Life, Kimberly Goff Cruz, who's been one of my main sort of persecutors at Yale in the administration, she's on record. I have it somewhere where she said that she was trying to implement the new vast Maoist DEI and CRT bureaucracy belonging at Yale. And so I think, I was already hated. And so they saw an opportunity to basically use me as like their Nazi to justify implementing this new,
So what's her name again?
Kimberly Goff Cruz.
Is she still there?
Yep, she's still there.
She promoted since then?
She's still the head. Oh, yes. She was VP of Student Life, and now she's VP of University Life. And there was this huge, shebang that happened in November of 2019 when that was announced. And she was announced as the head of belonging at Yale. And I am still, cited like I am the reason why Yale had to create belonging at Yale. This vast.
But you wound up not belonging at Yale.
Exactly. Everyone gets to belong at Yale except for me.
Well, you seem. I mean, I actually kind of feel threatened by you, even though we're on opposite sides of the country, and this is a Zoom lens. I can't tell what it is exactly. I mean, I'm just kidding.
Are you being serious? You feel threatened?
No, I'm joking. You know how my wife says, you know how you can tell I'm joking. I'm moving my lips. No, I like to do deadpan humor. I apologize.
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. At first, for a second,
but using some more. You were mentioning your 2020 hindsight, but in fact, it's 2018 hindsight, and in some cases 2019. So, the specific incident that happened, what time of day or night was that, and what floor did that happen on? Was that the lobby?
So it happened. It was on my floor.
On the 12th floor.
On the 12th floor, where my dorm room is. So what had been happening is that I'd been harassed for months. And now what I understand is that these students, I didn't know who anyone was. I hadn't seen anyone. I had never opened my door. I had never confronted them, but I was being harassed for months, and I was meeting with the Yale administration. I was meeting with the Yale police, and I was begging them to stop the harassment, and they wouldn't. And now what I understand is that, that they were actually, I ended up having to file a police report, just because I wanted to go on record with the truth. And so I was being harassed for months. I was meeting with the Yale administration. I was asking them to deal with the situation. So on May 8th, 2018, it was the middle of the night. And this is the penultimate day of the end of the semester. Like it was the very, very end of the semester, the very, very end of finals. And so I was frantically, cleaning my dorm room. I was packing up. I had already secured a storage facility in New Haven. I was, had already been moving things in there because I was trying to get the, excuse my French, the F out of Dodge as quickly as possible. And the only reason why I hadn't already left was because, you know, I had no money, and then also because I was teaching. And so I had to be on campus, you know, to teach and to grade papers. So that's the reason why I was up. And so I'd been harassed that whole night. And then you know, I thought that my harassers had left. I didn't think that anyone was still in that, you know, quote unquote common room. And so I thought they had left. Otherwise, I never would have gone in there. And so when I went in there, and then I went in there just to like throw some stuff away, to use the garbage receptacle. And so I just happened upon this person. It was this human form, completely covered by a blanket. I had no idea if they were Black, white, Asian, whatever. I had no idea if it was a man or a woman. And so the one thing that I wish if I could go back in time and do differently, is that I wish that I could, excuse me, I wish that I had not, you know, confronted them, and that I wish that I had just, you know, even if I still called, you know, the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police, as the police chief, Rennell Higgins, repeatedly told me to do for any reason whatsoever. I wish that I had just gone back. I wish I just turned around and gone back to my dorm room and done that. And so that, of course, you know, then none of this would have happened if I just stayed in my room. And so that's the one thing, of course, I wish I had done differently. But I think I was just, oh yeah, that's it.
Well, I spent a little time hunting around, because
Yeah.
my college was Berkeley, which is not too far from this.
Yeah.
So we're talking, which of these floors are we talking about here?
I think it's probably when it skips to the skinnier tier, the skinnier two floors. Yeah, I think, yep, it's right there. I think that's going to be it. And then I think there was like one level above
One
me.
of these floors up here, top or bottom.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah.
this
I'm
is
not,
one,
oh yeah, maybe
my
I
point
may,
here, this is not a general meeting place.
no.
So this is a story in the illustrious Yale Daily News
Yeah.
at the time of graduation 2020, which is, I guess, the COVID year. Another issue. Controversy over Black student reported for napping in common room continues. I don't know if you've read this story. I just pulled it up today, only because I wanted to get a picture of the dorm, showing this is not a place that's commonly traveled one way or another. It's not the place that you know, we see homeless encampments, we see people sitting on the street, and I don't know if Yale has this at all. They're a private campus to a certain extent. But seeing somebody kind of shacked out is not a normal occurrence on the 12th floor of the Hall of Graduate Studies common room. Jason,
that's it. Is that I think that what happened with me is that at that point I was so upset, and how I interpreted what I saw is that, oh, you've been terrorizing me in my isolated Yale dorm room for months, and now you're going to camp out. Now you're going to camp out in basically right in front of my Yale dorm room, my isolated Yale dorm room at the top of this tower. And now you're going to camp out there to stalk me and to harass me. And that's how I think I was so upset, and that I wasn't really thinking, you know, that I just was
okay,
like,
but just getting to the technicality of this issue. Was she lying down? Was she in a sleeping bag? I mean, what's the deal?
So she was lying down on the couch, completely covered from head to toe.
With what?
With a blanket. With a blanket.
So as if she were camping out. This is a common room. A common room is not a dormitory room.
It's a violation. It's a violation of Yale housing regulations to use the common room.
Did she have a place to live on campus at the time?
She had a room, I believe, down on like the 5th floor, something like that.
So she was a similar graduate student you had never met or whatever. But even if you had, she was covered up. So it was kind of like seeing somebody there. And mind you, from my recounting of the article here, you called a non-emergency line.
Yep.
You didn't call the equivalent of 911.
I did not call 911. I called the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police, exactly as the Yale police chief, Rennell Higgins, had repeatedly told me to do.
And this was what time of day? This is the evening,
This
right?
was the middle of the night, so it was about 2 a.m.
Middle of the night. So if she did want to sleep at midnight and she had a room on the 5th floor,
Right.
why was she not in the room on the 5th floor? This is a quiet
Exactly.
time of year in May, right? People are kind of leaving the campus.
Exactly. Because she was there. And now, in full hindsight, I believe that the ultimate Sean King style Twitter race hustler, Sean King, was coaching her and the man that I had encountered back in February of 2018. The two of them working together had coached them on how to perpetrate the hate crime hoax. And I do believe that the Yale administration was involved to some extent, that at least they were aware of what was happening, because they wanted this to happen, because they wanted me to use me as their Nazi to justify implementing belonging at Yale, which is exactly what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So I even after this happened, and I had to literally almost instantaneously move into a part of the dorm that was under construction for my personal security. I had to flee Yale's campus for my life while being taunted by a mob. I went immediately to my surrogate dad's house in Brooklyn. And I basically got into bed in their guest bedroom, and I didn't get out of bed for a month. I was hardly conscious because I was in such a state of shock. Like, I would just go into literal physical shock and just start shaking uncontrollably. And it was just, I just couldn't even believe what was happening to me. And even after like Yale President Peter Salovey, Kimberly Goff Cruz, Police Chief Rennell Higgins, they all immediately, before I even knew what had fully happened to me, they all immediately released public statements condemning me as this egregious racist, as guilty of racial harassment, even though they knew the entire story. They knew that I was the one who was the victim of harassment. So Yale grad school Dean Lynn Cooley charged me with racial harassment on June 5th of 2018. And thank God my surrogate dads paid $10,000 to a criminal defense attorney to save my life and to stop Yale from expelling me, because there is not a doubt in my mind that Yale would have expelled me otherwise. And knowing full well that I would probably kill myself, right? Just destroying an innocent person's life, destroying an innocent human and civil rights attorney, so that they could justify implementing, their Maoist DEI bureaucracy belonging at Yale. So in July of 2018, Yale General Counsel admitted to my attorney that they knew that there was absolutely no reason to think that I had ever engaged in racism, either implicit or explicit. And they said that they were going to drop the racial component of the harassment charge if I would just cop to having been the harasser instead of the person who was being harassed. And so Yale knew I was innocent. They 100% knew I was innocent. And then on August 1st, 2018, Yale President Peter Salovey releases this public statement that announces these university-wide sweeping policy changes, and he cites me as the impetus for all of it. He doesn't name me, but he basically says, Sarah Braasch is the reason why we have to do this. Sarah Braasch is this evil racist, this secret Nazi who perpetrated racial harassment and tried to use the police, and so to endanger the life of a Black student at Yale. And so he did that knowing that I was in hiding to save my life. He did that knowing that I was suicidal. And so then what ended up happening is that, thank God for my criminal defense attorney that my surrogate dads got, because, she was sending scathing letters, which I've made all of this public, to Yale. And then Yale, and that precluded the possibility. I hadn't had my hearing yet. Yale President Peter Salovey is announcing to the world that I'm guilty of racial harassment, and I'm the reason why Yale has to implement belonging at Yale. And I haven't even had my hearing yet. So he precludes the possibility of any due process. And then Lolata Siambola joins student government, and they create a committee with the express intent of destroying me. And they announced this in the Yale Daily News. And the Yale Daily News is the worst. The Yale Daily News was a full-fledged participant in the living or napping while Black hate crime hoax at Yale and the witch hunt at Yale that destroyed my life. So my attorney ends up telling, Yale, this is ludicrous. She gets half of the persons on the committee, the disciplinary committee that was going to adjudicate my hearing. They come from this student body that had created this committee to destroy me and had, in no uncertain terms, unequivocally expressed that intent in the Yale Daily News. So my attorney says to Yale, this is completely ludicrous. Where's the due process? There's no due process here. And so then what ends up happening is that in October of 2018, Yale withdraws the charges. And it was really interesting because they actually threatened to release another defamatory statement about me if I didn't stop saying that they dropped the charges. It was really important to Yale that I could only say that they withdrew the charges. And then I was told by one of my advisors that the reason why Yale said this, and I didn't fully understand it at the time, is because they wanted to say that they never investigated. And you think that sounds completely ridiculous. Like, how can you be publicly to the world condemning me as an egregious racist and guilty of racial harassment if you never investigated? But now you want to say you never investigated. So you never investigated, but you're sure I'm this egregious racist. And so I understood later why they wanted to do that is because then, and this is the heart and soul of my Section 1981 complaint, and I'm using Saif Khan's 1981 complaint as my model, and we can talk about that in a second. So what ends up happening is that Yale hires this quote unquote outside, like DEI, consultant to conduct a Title VI review, Title VI of the Federal Civil Rights Act, and to see if Yale needs a Title VI office on campus. And so he produces, his name is Benjamin Reese, and he produces what Yale still refers to as the Reese Report. This Reese Report is the basis of belonging at Yale. And to this day, Yale cites the Reese Report as the basis for belonging at Yale. And so what the Reese Report is, and this is the heart and soul of my Section 1981 Federal Civil Rights Anti-White Discrimination complaint that I'm going to file shortly against Yale, using Saif Khan's 1981 complaint as a model, is that the heart and soul is that basically Yale subjected me to a quasi-judicial process without my knowledge or participation. So this Reese Report is just
I think that's, is it, how do you spell his name? Reese?
Reese, Benjamin Reese. My face just got really big.
R-E-E-S-E?
R-E-E-S-E, that's right. And Yale calls it the Reese Report, and it's a complete farce. So Yale only gives Reese information that would be inculpatory, not nothing exculpatory.
Right, not exculpatory.
That's right. And so Yale only has Reese talk to the students who were harassing me, who accused me falsely of a racist hate crime comparable to a lynching, and Yale only gives Reese letter from the Black Graduate and Professional Students Association at Yale, and it's like the most ridiculously defamatory, just ludicrous letter ever. And they, accuse me, I'm the reason that there's white supremacy at Yale and I have to be expelled. And it's just completely ludicrous. I was trying to use the Yale campus police to murder Black Yale students. And to this day, Yale Police Chief Brunel Higgins accuses me of that. He has been on podcasts where he says I was trying to use the police to murder Black Yale students. And it is the most ludicrous thing ever. And I have repeatedly stated as much and said, does he not realize and I pursued a FOIA request. I just ran out of money and I had to eventually stop appealing. Otherwise I would have gone further. But I, pursued a FOIA request in the courts against Yale, against the FOIA Commission in Connecticut, to get the Yale police body cam footage of me only from the incident on May 8th, 2018. And, Yale Police Chief Brunel Higgins perjured himself at the commission hearing. And basically he basically insinuated that the Yale, it's just so ridiculous, it's hard to even believe it. He basically insinuated that the Yale campus police could shoot and kill a Black Yale student at any moment, And I'm like, because that would have to be the case, right? Because otherwise, why would I have called them to bring their guns? Of course, because I wanted them to kill, Lolata Siambola and Renaissance Jean-Louis. And I'm like, it's so ludicrous. I'm like, do you not realize that you're condemning yourself when you say something this asinine? I'm like, you're the one with the guns. If you don't want to kill Black Yale students, don't kill Black Yale students. I don't have magical powers. Just because I call the non-emergency helpline of the Yale campus police because I'm being harassed in my isolated Yale dorm room, this means I have magical powers. I can compel you to shoot and kill Black Yale students.
It's possible. We'll have to go back to the picture of the Yale graduate dorm here, but I have an alternate theory. Let's see if I can find it here. I'm coming up with a joke, right?
Yeah, now I do.
My alternate theory is that they could easily look at this building in this circumstance and presume it is Hogwarts.
Right. I joke about that it's very much.
Have you considered that maybe they thought you were
a witch or a sorceress?
Yeah, sorcerer. I like that term better. Who's Harry Potter's best friend there? Hermione.
Right. I'm like Hermione. Well, they did subject me to a witch hunt, so I guess
there's an interesting thing. So there are lots. We make light of the Salem witch trials and how crazy it was that they Monty Python had this thing. I'm not sure how close to reality is, where they dunk you underwater for 3 minutes, or whatever. If you come out alive, you're a witch, because nobody could live that long, and they would kill you. They would stone you and whatnot. And if you died, that meant that your soul is going to heaven, so you're in a better place anyway. So how did that work out for you?
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sort of at the bottom of the river,
Being done. But,
yeah,
but we like to think we're better than that. That we have totally advanced in our thing. We make fun of the Scarlet Letter. Not to spend too much time on this, but my sons went through local public school, and they were reading the Scarlet Letter, and they were asked to present incidents of the Scarlet Letter currently, and they were doing people protesting in front of abortion clinics. That was giving them the Scarlet Letter. And I said, well, you don't really need to look much further than current, at the time, it was like 20 years ago, than current day Afghanistan, where women literally are stoned, not in the marijuana sense, but literally have stones thrown at them until death for the possibility of having, philandered, screwed around or whatever. And so that's like slightly worse than a scarlet letter. I mean, a letter is bad. You don't want to wear that.
Right.
But how has it been for you, like
Still
almost
need it.
literally being Hester Prynne scarlet letter? And where does one go? You know, were you expelled? Were you kicked off? Were you invited not to return? Could you return? Would you have? And so forth. And I don't know, where does that leave us today? How did you get work? Is it possible to get work afterwards?
Right. Right. So, so I, in this letter that Yale grad school dean Lynn Cooley wrote withdrawing the charges in October of 2018. So she wrote, she banned me from campus and she banned me from
Who's the she in this case?
Yale grad school dean Lynn Cooley.
Cooley. Okay.
Yep. She banned me from campus, obviously completely illegally, and banned me from teaching at Yale, completely illegally.
So her name is actually an adverb. She did it quite coolly.
Right. That's right.
Oh, she treated you like a coolie. I don't know. The jokes write themselves here. So she's doing well, I guess. Is she still in this office?
Yep. She was, signed up for another 5 years by Yale president, Peter Salovey. He's been rewarding people left and right who have participated in the witch hunt at Yale to help him, try to destroy me. So I don't think that they ever could have imagined that I would fight back the way that I have.
Well, that's a funny thing. That's the way bullies are. Bullies often are the inverse and simultaneously cowards.
Right.
They do the hitting because they don't want to be the object. But when the hitting stops, if you survive, there's what I call FAFO. I don't know if you know that acronym.
Yeah, F around and
and fun down. So we see this oftentimes. The punching is the fun part. We see this kind of in the Middle East. Hamas does FAFO. They had a great time on October 7th, right. And people were, this one gal on Twitter, announced it as a new national holiday for the Palestinians, October 7th, and then like a few weeks later, she's calling it the Nakba, our great tragedy. How could we, so forth. I mean, it's that's the FA and then the FO. So what between FA and FO are we for Yale in your case?
Right. So we're definitely at the Darvo stage, which I think is also, in a, vastly, exponentially larger scale is what's happening right now to Israel and to all Jews, is that, and then Darvo, just in case anyone, I think probably most people know what it means, but it's an acronym. Oh, good. Okay. So it means a deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Oh, so this is a Marxian technique. This is what Karl Marx says: accuse them of what you do.
Exactly.
And sow confusion. Yeah. Exactly. So we're not going to have. We're kind of rounding out the hour here, and we're not going to be able to solve all of Earth's problems simultaneously. But I would like to hear, before we get to a few pages where people can learn to find you and support you and so forth. Perhaps you can just inveigh slightly and comment on the Emperor's New Clothes moment we're seeing at the pinnacle of universities.
Yes.
So the presidential level, but I think personally the presidents are really only emblematic of the institutional rot they're in. So where did things go wrong, and what do you think about what's going on with that? Obviously the one in front of the congressional hearing with McGill, Kornbluth, and President Claudine Gay of Harvard. But again, I think it stretches further than that through all our quote unquote elite institutions. You can't spell elite without ELI. Yale, Eli. At any rate, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm so happy, and I hope so much that this is the actual complete turning point in terms of the public waking up to the evils of the woke DEI and CRT industry, on campus and academia especially, but also everywhere. And, and Harvard actually with the ACLU created basically an entire conference that was about, vilifying and demonizing nobody white women Karens. So yeah, the rot is deep, and it's been going on for years. And I say, and I do not believe this is hyperbole, and I'm putting together a database. Academia literally created, a Get Sarah Braasch Killed Black Trauma Moral Outrage industry, and this huge body of fraudulent, Karen Gone Wild pseudo scholarship. And so it's not just the Harvard president Claudine Gay, yes, she needs to be fired. Yale president Peter Salovey, yes, he needs to be fired.
Well, he'll probably be replaced by worse.
Well, he has already stepped down, or not. He hasn't stepped down, but he's going to step down at the end of the academic year. And also, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, who's on the board of trustees of Yale, got Yale police chief, who was promoted to like the head of public safety at Yale by Yale President Peter Salovey. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont has appointed Rennell Higgins as the chief of public safety for all of Connecticut, which is a travesty, of course. But I believe that both of these events are occurring because Yale's very well aware that I'm going to file my Section 1981 complaint against them. And I do believe I can win. I do believe I can win, and I hope so much I get to trial. But I think that this is also, we have to end the woke, DEI and CRT industry, especially in academia. They are perpetrating BLM, living while Black race hoaxes. They are targeting, poor white students like me, which is an egregious violation of the Federal Civil Rights Act. They are, and they're doing this to sustain this multi-billion, this fake, utterly fake, made up multi-billion-dollar industry that they've created. And they're destroying our world. They're destroying our world. And I really think that this is why they made racial terror against quote unquote oppressors, okay again. And this is why Jews are now being terrorized on campus, including at Harvard and at Cooper Union. And of course, the presidents need to be fired. I think that the board of trustees at Harvard.
I think the special dispensations need to be removed. I don't mind if the presidents stay there because they're just toadies. I want to see them fired as a matter of formality and retribution, but I think they'll just be replaced by cardboard cutouts of same, and the real power will reside and continue in these offices of diversity, equity, inclusion, Marxism, CRT, etc. And I think what really needs to be done is there needs to be a removal of the special dispensations these universities get on a state and federal basis, yes. So that no pun intended, but that they're they wind up that their feces doesn't smell because they can do whatever they want, and they get these special tax benefits and they get these special grants and all that kind of stuff that just kind of flow their way regardless of the end product and the milieu in which these things are generated. So I think Harvard's a private institution. It's got I don't know how many billions of dollar endowment. They could last for a while underwater and so forth. Figuratively, getting back to our witches and whatnot, we could see how long they last. Dunk them for a little while, and if they come up alive, kill them. Anyway, but there's no reason to keep sending federal funding to them for their institutions and degrees and whatnot if they can't keep valid people going for valid reasons. I just want to end here. I'm going to impose upon our listeners and viewers. This is your first draft to modified Lewisian Hardian account of social conventions as a union and primary duty imposing social conventions, secondary power conferring social conventions of authority. I assume this is a bit of your thesis. Put it out there, and I'm putting it out here for public good, actually, because in case Claudine Gay with her 4 articles that got her the presidency, which ordinarily would not even get her an adjunct role, or even potentially into graduate school. Here's some other things that she might want to copy, although she might have to kind of downwardly spell some of the words. Anyway, so just to kind of round out the hour here, people can find you on Twitter.
Yes. Yes.
at Sarah Braasch.
I'm
One.
very easy to find.
Yeah,
I have
and then
Twitter.
there's we don't want to forget this part here. This is GoFundMe
Yeah.
fundraiser. I don't know how many cookies I want. Let's accept them all today. And there's a picture of you and a fundraiser, and people can contribute towards this goal. You know, I tried to help grow the Yale Endowment. I've been active as an alumnus, and you know, I try to get people to reunions. I think that Yale was a wonderful, wonderful place for me. It was a kind of a intellectual awakening. I came in as a 16, 17-year-old quasi pimply, let's say slightly gangly, geeky science, chemistry kind of guy. And I left pretty much like that, but with a little bit more information and interactions. And I really enjoyed the kind of the collegial atmosphere of getting to speak with a lot of people. Lunchtime and dinner time was a fabulous engagement, and people had wide-ranging conversations. I'm not sure that happens to the same extent. I think things have gotten balkanized. They were to a certain extent back then, but I think it's gotten more so. So as far as a lens onto this, I've had on my show previously, and I will early January, Scott Johnston, who wrote Campus Land. So that is a satire. It's a Swiftian, not a Hardian or a Lewisian, but a Swiftian satire and send up of campuses. But it's almost frankly literally true. It's wild events, and I'm not sure if you figure in that, but it's a great book. I recommend people read it to understand the level of I hate to use this word misuse, but depravity that's happening on campuses and the misuse of justice. And Yale's motto is lux et veritas, and lux is not for luxury, it's for light, and veritas is for truth. And you can't have truth without light. I'm sorry to do this, but there's an old joke. Guys, in his office, he sees some guy in front of the street lamp, and he's hunting around it for hours. And finally, he's finished his work, goes out there. It's like, you've been out here for hours. What are you doing? He says, well, I lost my car keys. He says, well, I'm not sure I can help you. I've been out here for 2 hours. He says, so anyway, they don't find it. He said, where were you when you lost them? He says, well, I was down that alley. And he says, well, why aren't you looking there? He says, well, it's dark. You're not going to find it there. So you do need light to get the truth. But if you're looking all the wrong places, that's not going to help either. So I think Yale and a lot of these other institutions, if they want lux et veritas, if they want to find the truth, they have to apply the light. Light is the best disinfectant. I think there's a lot of worms and bacteria of the soul that have kind of pervaded and brought a little bit of a sepsis situation, to carry on the metaphor. Anyway, thank you so much. Do you have any last words?
Oh, just thank you from the very bottom of my heart. I'm getting teary. This means the absolute world to me. I'm still, to a great extent, struggling to get the truth out. And obviously, I'm
while you were talking, I was thinking of having AI generate a picture of somebody getting his pants on while the truth is traveling around the world. I've had some similar circumstances with that. This is not the me hour, but I was a medical doctor. I still am, but I had my own active practice nearly 30 years in one place, and I had enjoyed the community and vice versa. And a narcotic addict did something similar, made it aberrant, absurd, obviously patently false complaint against me. And the board went with his over mine, even though there's 6 or 7 people in the office at the time. He made the complaint 4 months later. There was no verification. He was, 10 years younger, 100 pounds heavier, and he would have crushed me had anything that transpired actually did. So it was ludicrous. I stopped at yellow lights practically, and my life was turned upside down. So I have some sympathy for this situation. I actually am sending my case now to the Supreme Court. It's failed at a couple different levels. And so I understand kind of this idea of going for judicial, rectification. It may or may not happen. Mine hasn't happened yet. It may not happen. Getting the Supreme Court is a less than 1% chance, even after going through the First Circuit Court of Appeals. So I have some sympathies for that. But anyway, I'm going to just end with a slight self-promotional here. If people want to help support my podcast, they can.
Oh yes. They
can buy my book. This is a review on Kirkus, which is impartial. It's called Overturning Zika. It's unrelated to anything we talked about here, but it is a fascinating topic. It's nothing I really thought I would ever write about, but it's Overturning Zika, the pandemic that never was. And I think that, the only maybe coincident aspect to our talk here today is that don't believe everything you hear. There's a lot there. This was presented as a pandemic, the largest one on Earth up until the last one. but at the time was the largest one on Earth. And people are still operating under what I presume is a false thesis that Zika brings microcephaly. Zika is a real virus, microcephaly is a real issue, but one doesn't have to cause the other. And women throughout the tropics still under this presumption there's going to be a vaccine coming out in a year or so, and boom, we're going to be off to the races. So, people are, in a sense, craven, and I think that they toady to power, and we have to, work against that in our own small molecular way. So, Sarah, thank you so much for being on my show. I am in your debt, and if I can help you in any way, let me know, and happy to hear more of good tidings. Hopefully you'll be on your revenge tour, and Yale may have to work a little bit harder at bringing some looks to the Veritas.
That's right. And Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. All right, goodbye.
Bye-bye.